Yeah, I'm Durga Kota. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Fujitsu America. I'm based in California. My role is primarily to be the bridge between our global innovation and our research and development teams, and the markets and the customers we serve in the Americas region. So the way I see is, AI, end of the day, is a technology enabler. And what I would say is, I think public sector and public services needs to be looking at it from the standpoint of what is the challenge and what is the objective that you're trying to solve. What is the inefficiency that you're looking to take out, right, in the process or in the agencies that you work on. And starting there gives public services a better perspective on what tools need to be employed, and that's where AI can then come in. So for example, if you take procurement process, if you feel like there are some inefficiencies in the procurement process and you want to be shortening the lead times or improving experience, at that point in time you kind of look at where the gaps are and how can AI as a technology help, either process data, identify inefficiencies, look for patterns, and then provide some trends and forecasts that can help you solve that problem. Obviously, I think there are two aspects to AI adoption, right? So one is the adoption that you have to do from an implementation standpoint, right? So when you're going about selecting a solution and then trying to deploy that solution. The other aspect about responsible AI adoption is also how do you then maintain and manage that solution on an ongoing basis? Because these systems and these solutions are never one and done, right? So when it comes to the implementation and the solution selection, I think it is important for public sector to look at underlying technology and underlying architecture, because I think it's very important to identify what kind of customization, what kind of flexibility, what kind of explainability is built into these technologies. And this is where I think sometimes external partnerships help, because partners always have implemented other solutions elsewhere, and there are ways for public services to learn from that, right? But having said that, these days the ability to deploy solutions in privately, technologies like keeping a human in the loop, constant audits and assessments, and then finding other tools that are able to try to break your AI, right? I mean, like how we used to have ethical hacking, for IT, you can do that now with AI systems as well. And so I think those are all different ways that public sector can really employ to ensure secure and responsible adoption. So fundamental to governments kind of staying agile is really trying to change the model and make it a lot more data driven. So ultimately it is that data and the real-time insights from that data is what will keep government sort of at that at a position when they are able to respond more quickly and in a more agile fashion. I think one of the challenges that we have is that we do not have our processes laid out in a very data-driven manner. We have a lot of data, but that data is not very conducive. It's not organized in a way that decision makers are able to look at what is going on and be able to respond in a timely fashion. So there are technologies today, for example, like knowledge graphs that can really mine through a huge set of data that's coming from various sources, and then identify those connections and identify those patterns. And then those patterns and those connections are then things that you are able to use in creating leading indicators, right? So if what is likely to happen is something that you can kind of now predict using some of those patterns and indicators. I think those are some aspects and those are some technologies, and this is not related to AI alone. I mean, this is a more broader question in terms of how do you move towards becoming more data driven as an organization. I think one of the practical difficulties in all of this is that everybody has a limited amount of resources and a limited amount of time, right? So these constraints are always going to be a challenge, whether it is an AI project or any other project that you take up. So it's for every department, ministry, agency, or government to look at how do you prioritize, right? So prioritization becomes key. And this is where I think companies like Fujitsu, we are able to advise governments and ministries given our experience of having seen these kind of projects and implementations elsewhere, we are able to, create a potential map of solutions or ideas and try and place them on what has the greatest impact and what has the easiest implementation feasibility, right? And so you really have to put them across this map of feasibility versus impact, and then make your right selections where you are trying to maximize impact, but that you can deliver them in a reasonably meaningful amount of time. And I think that kind of perspective is something that industry and companies like Fujitsu can certainly bring to the table, and that can then help governments think about prioritization in a more meaningful fashion, because once you get a few things working, it builds more momentum, it creates more adoption and more buy-in, and then that's how you are able to then progress further in terms of creating your ideas. What gives me the most optimism is I think it is proven by now that the ability for AI to process data at scale and the kind of complexity in data, that is already surpassing human capability, right? I mean, there is no one person today who can read up the entire internet and know how to answer any question on that. And we've seen AI is able to do that. And I think that ability to process that volume of data and that complexity of data, and then combine that with the ability to actually learn and be trained on creating patterns and creating connections. To me, I think that combination, so the ability to process at scale and the ability to learn and train, I think that combination really makes AI a potent force, not just in terms of becoming a productivity lever, but also in terms of being truly creative, in terms of helping identify newer ways to do things, for example. And we are seeing that in a lot of traditional sciences like material sciences, chemistry, drug discovery. Those are areas today that AI is able to give scale advantages that are unbelievable, right? So we are able to do things in weeks that took years earlier. And to me, that gives me the most optimism, because we know that is not something that today people can do without using tools like AI. And so it is about understanding and appreciating the technology, and then knowing how to smartly use it and apply it to solve your specific problems.